It's time for Cup of Rad, so let's fill your cup with rad pop culture vibes. And now your over-caffeinated hosts, Mike and Katie. Hey kids, guess what? Here we are with another exciting episode of Cup of Rad. This week I've decided to dive back into the cosmos of our fandoms and pick up to talk to Insaiyandragonball again. Hey Theo, how you doing?
Hey Mike, I'm great, man. How are you?
I'm doing really good. Pleasure to have you on this show.
Thank you. It's a pleasure to be back.
Yeah.
I'm so excited.
That's good. I'm excited that you're excited to be back because that's always fun. It's always a good time talking to you.
Always, man. Always. We have a lot of good chats.
So what have you been just up to with your life when it comes to your fandom right now?
I made a new diorama, so I'm really excited about that. People have seen it on my Instagram. It's like a moonscape with a space background, like a galaxy and star. Really excited. It come together really well.
That is really exciting. No, your pictures that you've taken have been fantastic. And I really like that space scene that you got set up there. So look forward to seeing much more of that, especially when it comes to your YouTube. You're doing some great videos over there. But we're not here to talk about that kind of stuff right now. We're going to dive into something else. This whole month has been sort of a whole nostalgia month for us, and we're calling it RADstalgia. So that's why you're on today, right?
Yeah, man. I like it.
So with that, we're going to dip back. We're going to do a little Bill and Ted adventure, Back to the Future, and we're going to find out a little bit about you and maybe about me. We'll see. With this episode, we'll just do the whole Wayne's World, and we will head back to ask you this question. The number one thing on our list right now is, what do you recall as your first fandom?
My first fandom, Mike? Man, I'll take you back. I was about 6 or 7 years old, and Pokemon came on the TV.
Okay, Pokemon.
Yeah. So it came on before school, and I was like, oh my God, what is this awesomeness? You know, people catching wild animals and challenging other people with their animals and competing in tournaments, you know. I mean, you watched it with your kids sometimes, right?
Yeah. No, it's a fantastic show once I learned more about it.
Did you ever see the original that was, you know, the original series?
I think we had just gotten like a satellite at that time because where I lived, we didn't have really any TV.
Yeah.
And I remember that coming on. But for me, I was like watching Justice League. So it wasn't in my. And then again, as many listeners have heard, my mom did not like anything Asian influence when it came to entertainment. So that was just like, no. So. But no, it was never. I always thought the characters were interesting and cute, but beyond that, I never got into it until our kiddo.
Yeah, wow. Yeah, well, he could teach a lot of cool stuff. But, you know, the lyrics with the theme song, the lyrics, first lines, I just get chills when I hear it. I just remember my childhood, you know. The lyrics go, I want to be the very best, like no one ever was, you know. Like Ryan Reynolds said it in Detective Pikachu when he was playing.
Yeah.
Yeah, but, you know, so many memories come flooding back when I hear that, you know. Of course, you know, I'd seen other pop culture shows, like, in my childhood, but I would call Pokemon my first fan as it was so immense, you know. Its motto, gotta catch them all.
Yeah.
And that's all 150 of them. And now there's like 1,000, so
right?
Luck.
They just keep growing and growing. With that first fandom, what was one of your very first Pokemon that really grabbed your attention?
Oh, the first Pokemon would be Charizard. That was like my favorite Pokemon. You know,
that's our son's as well.
Cool. Even though he's not a dragon, he's pretty damn cool. It's like a running joke with the series. He's never a dragon, even though he looks like one. And you know, he always gets the short end of the stick because there's a new dragon type. Sorry, Charizard.
Yeah. So if he's not a dragon, is he just a giant lizard then?
Yeah, his type is actually fire type.
Yeah.
Flying type. He's fire flying.
Okay.
So, yeah, he's actually a dragon. He can learn dragon techniques. There is, like, maybe your kiddos told you he can evolve again. It's called Mega Evolution. It's something that was introduced just a couple of years ago. So it's a fourth stage, which they can only go to with a special, you know, diamond keystone or something, a mega stone. And it can only last for a certain amount of time. But he can evolve to a next stage where he is a fire dragon type, which is actually black, and he has blue flames coming out of his mouth, which is pretty damn dope.
Yeah. No, I've seen the pictures of that. Yeah, that other thing's pretty wild. So
yeah, I mean, you're kiddo with Mewtwo, right? There's like 2 evolved forms of Mewtwo as well.
Yeah, the Shadow Mewtwo.
That's a different one, but there's Mewtwo. There's Mega Mewtwo X and Mega Mewtwo Y.
Oh, okay.
So when he goes to X, he actually gets a second type, which is Psychic and Fighting.
Huh.
I know a lot about this stuff.
Nice.
You know?
Well, we'll come back to Pokemon because that's something that was also on our list. Unless you want to just jump right into that right now because we're talking about it.
No, that's all right. That's all right. But let me ask you, what was your first fandom?
Well, if you go on the retrospective saying what was the one that really was the big one, I would have to lean towards the Turtles. But the one where I have the most photos from when I was like the smallest, and as I mentioned the last time we talked, it was He-Man. He-Man and the Masters of the Universe. You know, I had figures from that, and I have pictures of like at a birthday party wearing like a He-Man sweatshirt and having the He-Man figures. And I remember playing with those lots. And that was something that was really cool for me. So that probably was actually my very, very first, like we're talking like 3 years old fandom. I had tons of those figures, played with those like mad. So that would be, I would say that's probably where I first got interested in things when it came to cartoons and figures, but it lent more to the figures because I don't really remember the cartoon that much.
Yeah, that makes sense.
Because
that young, of course.
Right.
Yeah.
Everything I remember about it is like playing with the toys. Whenever we went back to rewatch that show, it literally was like, well, none of this ever happened. It was all in my head.
But it's like you were there. It's like you lived it with those toys. You know, that was the memories.
Exactly. And that's what I think is really cool, is be able to build that up. And, you know, it was my first foray into fan fiction, apparently.
Yeah. Wow. The first stepping stone of, the journey of Mike.
Right. The rabbit hole that it is.
And how far down does it go?
I don't think it's going to ever stop. After what you've, introduced me to Dragon Ball, now it's just a whole new rabbit hole.
Yeah, it sure is. They just keep coming out with new figures and like, oh man, I'm going to be broke.
Right.
Yeah, I don't think my wife's too happy, but we'll see.
Well, I always like to say that it's better than other addictions because there could be a lot worse ones that you could be involved in. So,
absolutely right.
whenever it gets too intense, sometimes I like to bring that up to Kate. I'm like, so I could be doing crack. So, what do you prefer?
That's like one of the hashtags I use. If you've seen it, plastic crack addiction.
Nice.
So my next question for you is, Mike, what was your first dress up as a kid?
Now, I don't know if I ever ran around in a bearskin thong yelling, I have the power, but I went there. The only thing I really ever remember was dressing up as a Ninja Turtle back in the day. I broke a broomstick. Oh no. And made it into a bow. And I had like the mask, and I remember my mom making me one of the few costumes she ever made me, a turtle costume. It had a shell and all that. And I loved running around to that because where we live in the mountains, it was like the scene from the 90s movie there where it was the farmhouse feel and you run around in the bush like that. So that was probably my first ever real dress up. Like if you want to get like hardcore dress up, besides that, it's always a superhero. You tie a blanket around your neck, right? And you run around as Superman.
Oh, yeah. And you put like a plastic mask over it, or one of those eye masks over your face like Zorro.
Yeah, exactly. But yeah, no, it was a full costume. I remember after a while it was just the shell, and I'd just throw the shell on, and I'd go out and pretend I was Donatello. And then
that's cool.
I think I tried to make nunchucks at one point.
So would you say Donnie is your favorite then?
Yeah, Donatello has always been my favorite because I think it's the one that I strive and wish I could be more like, right? Because I'm not super technology cool. Like me and technology sometimes butt heads, and that calmness under pressure, and they always like able to pull something out of your hat to save the day. out of all the turtles, I'm like a combination between Raph and Mikey. Right.
Yeah, that's cool.
So,
like, my favorite would be Raphael.
Right.
Yeah, I like the the tough guy attitude. Big brother kind of reminds me of Dean Winchester.
True. Yeah. It's interesting to see that character evolve over time and notice that it went from just being, especially more in the cartoon, but the rude, sarcastic humor, right? To now he is the brute, right? You say the brother, right? So
yeah, it is cool.
So
very relatable,
right? So when it comes to dressing up, what was one of your first character dress ups?
The very first that I remember was Spider-Man, actually.
Okay.
Yeah, it was my 5th birthday, and I had a party and everything, and it was a plastic mask with the elastic, that you'd wear over your ears at the back.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, that's right. So it was a full, front face mask, and it had, a torso Spider-Man thing that was, kind of like a bib that covered the front and the back, it was like a pullover, but it was kind of like a double bib.
Okay. Oh, I think I've seen pictures of those.
Yeah, they're a pretty, low-budget kids dress up, I'd say. But, looking back, it was pretty dorky. But, as a kid, it kind of meant everything to me at the time, I was Spider-Man.
Right? Well, I think when you're a kid, you have those abilities to have those moments where you're like, you can imagine it all. Now we need the full suit to be able to feel like we're there. But as a kid, you can just have a mask on and you're like, I'm Spider-Man or Batman, right?
Yeah, and you totally feel it. I went to a kid's birthday party once. It was my buddy Ross's kid's party, and he was dressed up as Captain America for a kid's costume. It was a full puffy suit with the shield and the thing, and then all these other kids had their Iron Man costumes. I was like, damn, I never had this when I was a kid. This is next level. Well,
yeah, you look at the costumes now, and it's pretty impressive to see what our kiddos get to grow up with. He's got a Power Ranger suit that has the fake muscles all built into it. He had a Spider-Man and he had a Captain America, right? And you see that, and it's just like you said, you just had the bib thing back in the day, and it's like, this is what we grew up with. Now you guys really look like superheroes.
Yeah, it's nuts. Absolutely. You can just go to the local Toy World. They have a whole dress-up aisle, and yeah, you could just go nuts. And they're not even that expensive these days, which is good.
No.
Production.
So did you ever run around as Spider-Man, just on a general basis?
All the time. I think I wore it to bed a few times, just the bib, not with the mask because I couldn't sleep with the mask on. But yeah, we had some good times.
That's fantastic.
Really good time. So I got a question for you, Mike.
Sure.
What were your first toys or action figures that you remember?
That would take us right back to He-Man. I remember having those figures, having He-Man, Prince Adam, Teela, Beastman, Trapjaw, Merman. The unfortunate nature of having Stinkor, the toy that smelled.
What's the name of that lion that he rides?
It was just Battle Cat when it was in full lion mode. When it was not in battle mode, it was just Cringer.
You know what's weird? I've only really known a little about He-Man because they make fun of it on Family Guy a few times.
No, I got it.
Yeah.
Well, yeah.
Family Guy in America.
It is funny because it hasn't really aged well. It's a great premise, right? But the show itself has not aged well. Even the newer 2000 series, which I think was far superior than the original cartoon was, still hasn't really aged well, because it's almost 20 years old too itself, because it came out in 2000, right? So the show, I think the premise just doesn't really fit in the world. It's full on fantasy meets science fiction, because you got people walk around like they're just barbarians, but yet they've got blasters on their hips, right? So and they're flying around in robotic, vehicles and tanks, and all of a sudden magic comes out of nowhere, so It's a weird premise. On Netflix, if you watch the show Toys That Made Us, they did a great episode about He-Man and how it all came about. It's really, really good watch.
I'll have to look that up. I saw the Star Wars one of that.
Yeah.
That was cool.
Yeah, that's been a really great series. I'm dying for the third season because it's got Power Rangers and Ninja Turtles on it. So that'll be an excellent watch. Right? I'll just be in heaven. I'll be sad when it ends. But yeah, He-Man was the thing. I had the castle, and you know, I could just play for hours with those things because they were simple articulation and it was just full on beatdown mode. Those were the ones. That was the one thing that I had growing up that I really did love. That being said, from that it went right to Ninja Turtles, and Ninja Turtles is probably the line of figures that I wish I still had. So
you've got a few of them now, don't you?
I've got the reproductions that Toys R Us brought out a few years ago for some of the characters, and then I got a couple of the originals. I just have a hard time paying really to buy the old stuff again, because you pay a very premium price just because it's a retro figure. And we got Katie picked me up a Slash figure a few years ago at a con, and I was really excited because that was one of my favorite bad guys. And then I go back and watch the show, and he was not nearly as cool. But it was like, I think it was like $15 to get this. It was loose. It wasn't carded or anything like that. But like when I took it out of the little bag, it was like sticky, and I was like, oh, this is kind of gross. I had to like scrub them down and all that. So that was kind of my experience of being like, no, I don't know if I want to buy some of these. And I like to pose them and play with them. So I don't really want to buy carded ones if I don't have to. So I'm really happy with my Reveltech ones that I got for the 2012 Turtles. And then I've also got a couple of the Figure Arts, the classic 80s tune ones. So
yeah, they were very done.
Yeah, that's the one line that I try to get again versus like He-Man. Like I did buy some from the 2000 when those came out, but those ended up going away. And I had a whole bunch of Loyal Subject, those little guys, masters. But I just could never find He-Man or Skeletor at a price I was willing to pay. So I just skipped out on those. So as much as He-Man was my first action figures, so it shows that I've always played with toys, from 3 years old on, I've always played with toys. But
yeah, we never grew up.
Right? It just, that fandom has died. I'm kind of scared to see what they're going to bring to the table once they get this new movie that they're apparently doing, because the last time they tried to do live action, it was not a good movie.
Yeah, they tried that with Dragon Ball and that sucked.
Yes, I had saw the trailer for that and that was terrifying.
Yeah, Justin Chatwin, that was ridiculous.
So on that note, what were some of your first action figures?
Well, in actual fact, the same 5th birthday as when I got my Spidey costume, my godmother, she gave me my first ever action figures. So it was actually a double pack, and it was of Batman and Superman. Nice. And yeah, and it was like the coolest thing ever for me. Like Batman had gray armor, and he had a gray cape. He even had the spikes on his gauntlets. Superman was the same red and blue we all know. I like the Batman better. His torso would actually spin 360 degrees around. So I always used to spin him like it was like a series of punches, like bam, 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 bam. It was really cool.
That's awesome.
And it also came with a comic book, and it was Batman and Superman, and they team up against Lex Luthor, and he had an armored suit. That was really cool. It was kind of like my first nerdy experience, maybe, with action figures and comic books. That was pretty cool. Okay. With you saying that, I'm like calculating in my head, like if I had ever seen something like that. And I think I remember that line of figures that came with comics. What time frame was that approximately? This was like 96.
Yeah. Okay.
I was 5 years old in 96.
Yeah. Okay. So yeah, I can place what you're talking about actually, which ages me, but
Yeah, but like, I mean, that started to be pretty common, I guess. You know, like the Marvel Classics line. They used to bring out a Spider-Man and it'll have a comic book with it as well.
Yes, they created those reprints that were really cool to have, especially if you cracked it open, right? And you get that venture into.
Yeah, they even did a reprint of the very first Spider-Man. You know, that's cool.
Yeah, well, yeah. Back in the day, I think as much as toys today, in some aspects, mainly the collector market, are better than they ever have been. I think those 90s figures, and probably biased because that's really when I grew up and you yourself grew up, but I think those 90 figures really stood out as something different because the toy companies were doing something pretty fantastic for the price point and the articulation and the paint and all that that's missing from today's toy era.
Yeah. Well, like, I guess, you know, a lot of figures back then might have even been hand painted. They weren't mass produced. You know, they were probably a little bit more expensive than most of just the basic figures that we have today. But for the time period, it was really cool.
Well, I find it wild because, you know, a Ninja Turtle back in the day was $3.99. It's now close to $12 for a basic figure.
Yeah.
So
still pretty reasonable.
It's reasonable for sure, but it's interesting to see how the quality has gone down. You know, when it comes to some of the sculpting and even the painting and all that, it's pretty wild, unfortunately. But as I say, I'm biased because I'm super like RADstalgia for that stuff. So
yeah, well, I find it also depends on what toy line, like toy producer you go with.
Mm-hmm.
You know, like some companies will research it better than others. Like I'm going to do a YouTube review soon of two of the same character but two different toy lines.
Okay.
So that's going to be really cool. So, Mike, what is the first cartoon that sparked your nerd side?
That then is going to have to be the Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles. That was the first really just, oh my goodness, how can this not be the most amazing thing that I've ever seen in my life? And why has this not been my life sooner? The fact that they had the jokes and the fighting and the all the mutants were just fantastic, and the colors and the pizza, so much pizza. That there, right? That there is what really sparked anything for me. It was the catalyst for everything. Seeing those four turtles go up against the Shredder and Krang was just mind blowing, and that's what stuck to me. Because like when that new 2012 Nicktoon came on, I was just super stoked to be able to share that with Kiddo, right? So that is the fandom. That is the big one.
Yeah, it's nothing like being able to share like part of you and part of your past and childhood with your kids, you know.
Yes,
that's really awesome.
It's a completely different experience because most of the times, honestly, it comes down to I'm super excited to show it, and then he'll just be like, "Dude, this is lame. Like, why are you showing me this?" You know, but if he comes around to it himself, if he's like, "Hey, I want to watch that," I'm like, okay, he's like, "Yeah, this is kind of cool." But if I pump it up, right, he's just like, nah, I don't know what's going on with you. This is strange, dude. So, but yeah,
this is what you used to watch. This
exactly. You're gonna experience that one day. Just you wait.
Oh, yeah. I can see it happening.
You'll just be full on like, this is the raddest thing I've ever seen. I can't wait to show you. And it's just gonna be like, no, not happening.
Should be like that spaceship's so fake you can see the strings.
Right? But yeah, that's Turtles. You know, that's the thing that stuck. The voices and everything, they were just perfect back then for me. And that was the one that I loved being able to come home from school and watch, because those adventures were just fantastic. And that just bled into everything of my life, from the toys to finding the old Mirage comics and reading the Archie comics, because Archie brought out adventures that were based off of the tune. And yeah.
I got a left field question for you.
Sure.
So what country created the Turtles? Was it Japanese?
No.
Yeah.
It was America.
Really?
Yeah.
That's cool.
So
I like that.
New Jersey, I believe. That's where Kevin Eastman and Peter Laird created it. Basically, they wanted to create something that was like make fun of Daredevil at first.
Oh, yeah.
And they kind of poking fun of that kind of whole genre and all that. Honestly, you know, when I talk about how my mom didn't like certain things, nothing really makes sense. It was literally just if it looked or seemed off sync, it was just not her jam. Like Turtles was okay. Believe it or not, Biker Mice from Mars was okay. The Toxic Crew.
I love that.
Right? Well, I'm sorry. It's got Rob Paulson in it, so it was awesome. You know, Toxic Crusaders, the old Trauma Toxie that they made into a cartoon, that was okay. Anything, you know, Batman and all that was, but the moment it had the anime look or that, then it was just not cool. And I have no idea why. And I'll never know why, because that was a question that I never grew up asking. It just kind of like, okay, fine, whatever. I'll find other things. But yeah, Ninja Turtles was totally cool. No clue why.
It's just one of those things, man. You just see it, like you just know how cool it is as soon as you see it, then you get drawn in.
Yeah.
And then you just sucked into a fandom like that. And that's what all the greats do. You know what I mean? That's what you'll always remember.
Exactly. So what is the first cartoon that really sparked your whole nerd side?
Well, you know, I guess it depends what everyone's version of what, you know, quote unquote nerd is. But I'd say, you know, this is pretty out there. Dexter's Laboratory.
Okay.
Yeah.
That'll make Katie happy. She loves that show.
Oh, yeah. It's so funny and it's so quirky. Like, you know, it was on Cartoon Network when I was 8, and I was like, dude, this kid is an evil / mad scientist from his bedroom. And I just wanted to build all his vehicles and gadgets like that he had just from watching the show. Like, if you hadn't noticed already, I'm very easily influenced. But that's pretty much all I got to say about that.
Well, that's fantastic. Yeah, that was a good show. Everything that Gendy Transvinsky has created has been pretty fantastic. I know I just butchered his name, but it's not the easiest one. When you look at, you know, Samurai Jack and even that Clone Wars cartoon that he did that before they did the CG one, you know, he's done a lot of.
That was a really good gap filler between 2 and 3.
Yeah,
that series.
Yeah, I prefer the that 2D one versus the CG one. It was just so slick and reminded you of watching like little samurai movies.
Yeah, that's right. I always remember because they had Kit Fisto in the Clone Wars cartoon, and that was like the most you ever saw. And he was like, you know, diving under the water with his army, and his lightsaber was like, you know, sparking electricity because it was underwater. If you recall that. Yeah.
Oh yeah, that was a great scene. Just watching it steam. Yeah. Yeah.
Oh, who's this fish dude? Octopus tentacle head, like Davy Jones.
Well, yeah, that was just. Well, I love that whole episode where Mace Windu just takes out that entire set of people, droids and all that.
Yeah, strong as he with the Force.
Yeah, I wish we could get a Mace Windu movie one day.
Well, if they can turn Samuel L. Jackson back to a 20-year-old version of himself, like I think they might be able to do it.
Right?
Catch him up.
My idea is to have them cornerly remake Snakes on a Plane, but set in the Star Wars universe, and call it Ewoks on a Star Cruiser.
I like that.
All right.
Ewoks.
Whole bunch
Ewoks
of
everywhere, man.
Cracked out Ewoks trying to kill someone, and Samuel Jackson is Mace Windu cutting them down. Even though I love Ewoks, I just think it would be funny.
Tired of these motherfucking Ewoks on this motherfucking Star Cruiser.
See, it's right there. It writes itself.
Yeah, I mean, the script's there. We just have to, you know, get some actors, get a director, and we could probably produce it ourselves. It'd be very low budget. You know? We could use like empty shipping container.
Right? The beauty of being a fan, you come up with these weird moments in your head that you think would be amazing.
Yeah, full of ideas. Always thinking.
But yeah, Dexter's Laboratory was a great cartoon. I know Katie loves that, so I might have to let her listen to this and she can chime in later about it, because how much she loved that tune. We even have a Christmas ornament of Dexter and his sister that goes on the tree every year. Yeah, she's got reindeer antlers and...
I just loved how she was like so just clueless and ditzy the entire time, and she'd just always sneak in and break his shit.
So true. With that, then, your first superhero film.
My first superhero film. Well, I think you're gonna like this one, Mike.
Okay.
I really do. All right, Batman, 1989.
Ah.
So Michael Keaton was my first Batman.
Nice.
So when I was 9, a neighbor down the street was having a yard sale, and there it was, a VHS tape for $2. So I got my dad to buy it for me, and it was probably the biggest movie experience for me up until this point in my life. So I was astounded at what Tim Burton had created for the screen, like the costume, the Batmobile, and the Batwing. It was an amazing feat for the time, and Jack Nicholson's Joker was just very chilling, very bone shit.
Yeah, that whole film, that is my answer. I saw that actually in theaters, so originally when it was in theaters.
Yeah, that was 2 years before I was born. I was a bit late for the movie. But it sort of really changed a lot for me when I was a kid. It was like the coolest thing ever. Like, I was the only kid in my whole block that had seen it. I was like, guys, you got to come over and watch this movie. They're like, oh, okay. They're like, oh, how cool is this, man? He's flying a plane that looks like the bat symbol.
That is fantastic. Yeah, no, the great moments, like Tim Burton was able to create such a rich visual style with that film that I think really defined the Batman at that time. And for me, it's still my favorite version of Batman to this point, at least.
Well, I mean, what did you have before that? Adam West, right?
Very true. Very true. Well, besides that, I'm always animated, right? I'm always with the animated Batman. So.
Oh yeah, Kevin.
Yeah, right. Go back to episode. No.
But Tim Burton, he was great. He did the sequel, Batman Returns with Michelle Pfeiffer, Catwoman. That was cool. I didn't see that till years later. But the whole tone of those movies, like the darkness, the cinematography, just the whole tone, it captured it perfectly. And then for some stupid reason, they got Joel Schumacher on board, and then he just made it into a family-friendly film with Batman Forever.
Yeah,
Val Kilmer.
Yeah, I've come to the point to realize that those Batman Forever and Batman and Robin are homages to the Batman 66. And once I got to that point of realizing that that's what they were trying to be, I'm a little more forgiving on it. Like when I first saw Batman Forever, I was all over it because that was another one I saw in the theater, right? And it was just this like, it's colorful and weird and all that. And then as you grow up, you're like, wow, that is not good. But then I realized after watching more of the old 66 stuff, I was like, okay, so they were trying to copy that. Okay, I can give them some props on that. You lose the heated anger moment, right? But it wasn't.
But if you could give an award to the worst Batman, who would you pick?
Oh, that's a tough one. That is really tough. I would have to say it's got to be one of the Schumacher ones. I didn't really ever really like Val Kilmer, which is going to gasp on a lot of people. But I honestly don't fully remember Clooney, so it's going to be a toss-up between the two of them. They're going to have to fight over it probably.
Fight about who's worse.
Yeah. Yeah, they're going to have to...
I'm the worst one. No, I'm the worst one. No, I'm the worst one.
Right? But this...
the same does.
This will be the one that'll just blow everyone's mind. I only like Bale's Batman really in Begins and kind of in Dark Knight. I can't stand him in Rises. And I will be honest right now, as much as I'm a huge Batman fan, I have only watched The Dark Knight Rises once.
Wow.
That is how much I disliked the film as a Batman film.
You know what? In saying that, I think that you should at least watch it one more time, and maybe you might come around to it. You never know.
Yeah, it could be. I have the trilogy. Most likely, I know we have a Batman 80 episode coming up that's going to talk about more in-depth Batman stuff. But I don't know why. It just I found it boring, honestly. for what it was, you know. But
I really liked Tom Hardy.
Yeah,
that was cool.
Yeah, I don't know.
But I can see why. You're saying it was boring. But yeah, there were a lot of boring parts. It was very slow Batman film. I will agree on that. But I think it was integral to the plot. I mean, how else could they end it? You know.
Yeah, I don't know how they would have done or gone. I just kind of was the least favorite of that whole era that they created. But as I say, with growing up with Burton's Batman, that was that dark, ominous, very comic booky, cartoony villains and all that. I was stoked for, right? So
yeah, like that feel of Gotham City, you know, the city of crime.
Yeah, the dark, seedy underbelly.
Yeah, that's right. Well, Mike, what was your first sci-fi film?
First science fiction film that I can really recall is going to be Return of the Jedi. And that one there, I had watched, I had the chicken pox, and my mom went and rented a whole bunch of movies, and Jedi was in there. And that was the one that I just kept watching over and over again. And I was just mesmerized by this whole world. So then after that was when I watched the other ones. I don't know why I watched them out of order. But Jedi was my jam for my first science fiction. How about yourself?
My first, Back to the Future.
Okay.
Yeah. Well, you know what? Like, I couldn't believe it came out 20 years before I actually got around to seeing it.
That's fantastic.
Yeah. And when I saw it, it's just like, wow, you know, great storyline. The continuity was fantastic and super lovable characters. They're like Marty McFly and Doc Brown. They're a very unusual pairing. You know, an adolescent teen and a crazy old mad scientist with a family fortune to burn through that funds his inventions.
You're right.
But I never get tired of seeing the trilogy. It always brings a smile on my face. If it's on TV, I'll watch it. I've got it on DVD, the set, and there's always that thing, will they make a fourth? I don't think they should. I just think they should just leave it, you know.
Yeah, you know.
It's kind of a masterpiece.
Yeah, that one there, I've heard that Bob Gale has said that as long as he is living, there will never be any more to that story. So hopefully they respect that. But yeah, Back to the Future, that's one of my comedy jams. Like that is always on heavy rotation in our house because I just love the humor in it.
Which one's your favorite?
I don't think there is. You know, they're all like, I guess the first one because it's so fresh, right? And it's so that fish out of water feeling. But I just like it as a story. It's a whole story to me. Just one really long story. Do you have a favorite?
Number 2.
Okay.
Well, the first time I watched it, it was just on TV and they were playing number 2. I saw like an ad for it, like Saturday, 7:00, Back to the Future 2. I was like, oh, okay. And then there was this dude just riding a hoverboard. I was like, oh, that's cool. I'm going to go watch that.
That's awesome.
And that was like I kind of like sort of understood they were time travelers, but and then like it was a couple of years later, I'd say a neighbor of ours who used to pirate a lot of DVDs because that was in back in the early 2000s. Like he was giving away his VHS collection and we ended up inheriting it because he had already pirated all of the same DVDs. He used to just go to the video store, rent 10 DVDs on Cheap Tuesday for like $1 each, and he used to just copy them onto discs. And yeah, I got all of his collection, and he had all 3 Back to the Futures. I was like, well, I've never seen the first. Let's see what happens. And I was just like, oh my god. I just went up to my mom and I was like, mom, do you know how cool this Back to the Future is? And she's like, it's like 20 years old. And I was like, what?
That's fantastic. That's fantastic. Well, it really is wild when you can find out that you are watching something that is so old and it doesn't feel old to you. I think that shows how good movies can be, right?
Definitely.
From that one there, what is one of the first fantasy films that you remember watching?
Fantasy? Probably Fantasia.
Okay.
No, not Fantasia. I'm getting very mixed up. No. The Never-Ending Story.
Okay.
The Never-Ending Story.
Well, Fantasia is fantasy. It's like an acid trip of fantasy, so.
Yeah. No, I just always get the names of those two mixed up because, like, obviously it's fantasy and that's what you say is Fantasia, but, No, but Never-Ending Story.
Okay.
There's Alcor, the Luck Dragon.
Yep.
And Elliot. That was really cool. Saving, No, but isn't that the name of the place, Fantasia, that he's in? That's why I get mixed up.
It could be. I don't remember it that much. We watched it a few years back, and And I kind of got bored. But like at the same time, I remember it being so awesome, but we were showing it our son. He loved it. But I don't remember. I really don't.
Yeah. Well, it was like late 80s, I think it was.
Yeah.
Made it.
Yeah. Well, it's amazing because like how some of those old movies you can have these really great, fantastic memories of things. And sometimes you can go back and rewatch it and it's kind of like, wow, this isn't as good as I remember it being. Right?
Yeah, well, absolutely. I've done that a million times. Like, this is going to be so dope. I can't believe I got this on DVD. I watched this when I was a kid, and I'm like, well.
What have I done?
Yeah, that's crazy.
Well, that's for me, fantasy wise, would be The Dark Crystal. Like, I remember that being just a really weird, trippy, amazing movie. And we watched it, and I was just like, wow, this is boring. But that being said, when Netflix dropped their trailer for the prequel series that's coming out in August, my mind was instantly like, they're doing another Dark Crystal. I must watch this.
Well, I've never even heard of it. What is it?
The Dark Crystal was made by Jim Henson. It's like early 80s, late 70s, somewhere in that era.
You mean the same dude that did the Muppets?
Yeah. And it was... Yeah. All puppets, and it was all done in this fantasy world where this crystal was like the life force, and this little geldling thing goes on a quest and has to deal with dark forces and all that. And there's like vulture birds and robes and magic and furry creatures. But yeah, it's all done with puppets, similar to how they did, except for with having a live action aspect of like the Labyrinth that they did. But it's all puppets, and it's trippy. It's a great watch because it's a great slice of film history. But I was amazed when we watched it a few years back, actually, how dry it really, really is. But that was true too to Jim Henson, that being that he was the artist that he basically, the Muppets were like Muppets and Sesame Street were like the bread and butter to be able to do the art that he really wanted to do, which was that of like the Dark Crystal style with puppets, because he always saw the medium of puppets transcended just children's fare, right? So, but definitely, if you can, even look it up on YouTube and try to find some clips just to see, because it's got some great stuff in it. It's just it's a long one. So, but they're doing the Netflix revival. There's a series coming out at the end of August, I believe. So
that's cool. Well, Mike, what was your first horror film?
So my first horror film came when I was about 9, I believe. Yeah. And at that time, I'd been watching a lot of things here and there. And my grandfather, granted, as much as I would watch like cartoons with him, he wasn't a big science fiction fantasy guy. He'd watch that in cartoon form. But when it came to movies, he loved his Westerns. And at one time he was like, "You want to watch a horror movie? Here's a horror movie." And it was Psycho, right? Yeah. Alfred Hitchcock's Psycho was the very first ever horror flick I would have seen. And then after that, it was like The Birds. And I just remember being like, wow, this is amazing. And then when you got into other ones, you realize, wow, Psycho is really tame. The stuff I'm seeing now is, oh my God.
Yeah, wow, that's impressive, man. Psycho. Like, I've never seen the original. I saw the remake with Vince Vaughn.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. But what a film.
Yeah.
And Alfred Hitchcock, he really knows his stuff.
That suspense and everything that was in it was fantastic. And I think it's
very iconic.
Right. Yeah. That music and everything. I think starting also with some of the older stuff kind of gave me a different feeling when it came to some horror films. But that classics, that's where I started. And after that, it was a whole bunch of Universal stuff. Like after that, it became like Frankenstein and The Mummy and all that. So that's where I cut my teeth when it came to horror films. After that, I
read Frankenstein like probably 8 years old. I couldn't sleep for a
That's brilliant.
Yeah, Theo, read this. I was like, oh,
okay. It's amazing when people try to get you to do certain things like that, and it just scares the crap out of you.
I think I vaguely remember running outside, getting a shovel and burying the book in the yard so I couldn't,
You went hardcore. That's fantastic.
Come on anymore.
What was your first foray into horror?
Horror, okay. So I was a real wimp as a kid. obviously, because I read Frankenstein. I scared really easily. I was over a friend's house like for his 13th birthday sleepover, and he's like, "Oh, let's watch Texas Chainsaw." I'm like, "Nah, I'm not watching that, man. I'm not. You can watch it. I'll just go do something else. I did not want a part of it." So I didn't end up watching it because I was a real wimp. But that was when I was 13. When I was 15, like at this point, Saw had come out, all the Saw movies.
Yep.
And when I was 15, coincidentally, Saw 3 came out at the cinemas at the time. And because I was of age, because Saw here in Australia, their rating is MA 15 plus, and you have to show your school ID to show that you're over 15, and you get to go into the movie. So that was my first 15 plus movie. And basically I went with my buddy, that same buddy who we had the sleepover with, and he was all right with gore and everything, and I just wimped out. I was just had to cover my eyes, and I was like, dude, just tell me when this bit's over. So now of course, I don't mind gore and horror, and I quite like it actually, but since then I've seen all 8 films. And it's a pretty good masterpiece from start to finish, including the Jigsaw film that they did, which was a big, mind fuck. It was really cool.
Well, yeah.
So now I don't mind. I've seen I'm into the old school horror. I like the whole Nightmare on Elm Street and Friday the 13th. I think those franchises, as bad as they were when you watch them back, they did have a lot of merit, and they did cement a lot of horror in today's pop culture, and it wouldn't be what we have today without those characters, for sure.
Very true. Very true. It's interesting having that differentness where it was for myself being that things were a lot more tame from where when you grew up, things had already hit that splatter gore feel, right?
Yeah. I just remember in the first Friday the 13th when, Kevin Bacon gets killed and all his gut come out and it's freaking, tubes.
Yep. Oh yeah. A lot of those films haven't aged well, unfortunately, because they went so far into the realm of the splatter gore, right? And they had to create all those effects, and you see from what you see nowadays where it's so realistic to what it was considered realistic back then. It's a vast difference.
100%. But I mean, at the time, if you wind the clock back, if you were a movie going adolescent teenager and saw Friday the 13th, I asked a lot of parents, I guess, when they're like, "Oh, what'd you go see?" "Oh, we went and saw the new Friday the 13th. This is back in 2000. I was like, "Oh, I saw the original when I was a kid, and it was so scary, man." And then I watched it, and I'm like, "Fuck." I guess you wouldn't know any different if it was your first movie going experience with a horror film, Very
true. Very true. But on a lighter topic, let's just switch gears. We're going to go back to that Pokemon question.
Yeah.
So, because that was your jam, what was your first Pokemon partner?
Charmander.
Okay.
So, some people say the hardest decision as a kid was choosing your first Pokemon partner. It was the hardest choice. There's memes. There's a picture of in the game with the 3 Pokeballs, and it just says the hardest choice as a child.
I can see that.
Yeah, it's very relatable. So you have a choice, obviously, maybe either Charmander, Bulbasaur, or Squirtle, fire, grass, or water. But it was a very easy decision for me to pick Charmander. It was like destiny, because it was my ultimate goal as a 9-year-old kid to own the Charmander and train it to become a Charizard.
Okay.
And I now have the pop vinyl figure of Charmander, and it is super dope and adorable, and he now sits on the dash of my truck. And when I have my little girl Summer with me, she gets in and she sees him and says, "Oh, hello, Manda."
That's fantastic.
But it'll always have a special place in my heart, Pokemon. And especially when I went to see Detective Pikachu and saw Ryan Reynolds as Pikachu trying to fight that Charizard like it was a giant pit bull. That was really dope. So
what drew you to the Charmander?
Well, I guess it's also much of watching the show as well. Charmanders, Pokemon, they have their own personalities, even though they can't talk, if you hadn't noticed. They all can say their name. It's really weird. But they do have personalities. They do have their own, person, I guess. But Charmander was always very brave. He would always, look out for the other Pokemon, and he was the tough one, and he was the first of Ash's Pokemon to ever evolve, because Ash trained him pretty tough. And once the story goes, like once he turned into, the next form is Charmeleon. So he's like a bigger version of it, but more rough looking with big fangs. And I just thought it was cool. But when Charmander evolved to Charmeleon thought he was too cool for Ash and wouldn't listen to him.
Okay. He had that teenage mentality then.
The what, sorry?
He had the teenager mentality.
Yeah, he was like, I don't have to listen to you. I'm stronger than any of the other Pokemon, and I'm just not going to give a fuck. It was that. And then there's this one episode, this is real quick, where there's these prehistoric Pokemon that wake up out of this cave, and then one of them, it's called Aerodactyl. You might have heard of it. It's like a big pterodactyl. But he kidnaps Ash, and Ash tries to get Charmeleon to help, and he's flying away. And then Aerodactyl's like, haha, you can't get me. And then Charmeleon's like, oh yeah. And then he forces himself to evolve into Charizard to grow wings and fly after Aerodactyl.
Oh, really? That's fantastic.
Yeah.
That's.
And then Ash is like, oh, Charmeleon, you evolved into Charizard to come and save me. And then Charizard just has this giant burst of flame out of his mouth, and then he just lights Ash on fire. And then Ash is like, oh, he only wanted to fight with Aerodactyl.
Actually, I recall Kiddo talking about that episode now.
Yeah, it's a very cool turning point in the anime. But that was probably the first time I saw Charizard, and I was like, damn, that's dope.
So you need to then get the figure art they have out for that then?
Yeah, well, the only one that's available that's any decent is the D-Arts. But I've been looking at it on eBay, it's over $200.
Whew.
So I might have to put that on hold. But they are doing a re-release, you might have seen, that I put on my Instagram of Blastoise.
Yes, I saw that.
As the SHF line, and I've got that on pre-order.
Nice.
So that's pretty cool. I hope they'll do one for Charizard, because they also have one of Venusaur as well, which is the final form of Bulbasaur. And the Venusaur is really cool.
Okay. Yeah, it's cool that they're being able to bring out some of those figures again for people to be able to collect. I hope that the Funko line actually comes out a little more fast and furious, because it seems to be so sporadic. We had just got our Charmander the other day, so Kiddo's super stoked about that. Yeah, he's got that beside his Switch. He's got the Charmander, and the Bulbasaur. So he's just waiting for Squirtle to come out now.
Yeah. We'll see when that drops, damn Funko.
Right. Taking forever with this license.
So, Mike,
yeah.
What was your jam as a kid? What was the fandom that defined you?
Well, it's going to take it right back to the Ninja Turtles, because I wasn't really into the Pokemon and all that, but Ninja Turtles, that was and still is my biggest fandom. I don't think anything could ever possibly beat it, even though I'm going pretty hard in Dragon Ball right now. But break it down, probably it'd be the Ninja Turtles, and Batman probably came up right after it when it came to that cartoon.
That's cool. Yeah. But I respect that you're still in the Ninja Turtles since you were a kid, and that's just really cool. And I know you love Power Rangers as well.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that one there got reinvigorated after being able to watch that with Kiddo and go through all 25 plus seasons of it, which was pretty fantastic. Thank you, Netflix.
That's a lot of screen hours.
Right. Yeah, well, when he didn't watch a lot of other shows, so when you watch one episode or two episodes after school, it actually went by really fast. The summers really helped though, right? Summers and spring breaks when you didn't have anything to do. It was too hot to go outside. So what is your defining fandom?
Well, Dragon Ball Z, I'd have to say. It was the biggest fandom when I was 11 years old through to 13, 14 years old. But great storytelling. Characters are so likable. The good guys always teach a great lesson, standing up for what's right and protecting what matters most. Family, friends, the earth. But mostly I admired their confidence, especially Vegeta. He was always the underdog, but would never accept second best. He'd keep going no matter what. It's funny, when I'm struggling at the gym to get through the last rep on a bench press or a squat, I ask myself, would the principal Saiyans give up? Hell no.
There you go. There's some inspiration for you.
Yeah, I mean, I could go on for hours about how much Dragon Ball means to me, but the biggest and most positive trait I take from it is to never give up, you know, just to keep going till you reach your potential, then break through that and take it further.
No, that is very good, especially with where I am in this show. It shows that it's that mentality of just continuing on and always improving yourself, which is a great trait to see within the show. It's a great teaching moment.
Yeah, so we can all learn from it. And it's stuff like that that just sticks with you. And you can live your life by it, you know. And you teach it to your kids. You teach, you know, all your values that you've learned. You know, it's funny how, like, TV, movies, pop culture, you know, shape you as a person. It's very, very cool. Very cool.
Well, yeah, because we don't have the same kind of, you know, in some cases, some cultures have it more, but a lot of people who are... stories are all passed down from our elders back in the day, and that's what would have defined a caveman, right? The pictographs and all that.
Yeah.
And that's basically what fiction is for us. It's a way to find what defines us and what we enjoy and what we can relate to, which I think is really cool. From that being said, with Dragon Ball, I know you've answered this many times before on your Instagram and all that, but for those that don't follow you, who is your favorite character?
Vegeta, Prince of all Saiyans.
That makes sense. He's a pretty badass guy from where I am. He's still a bad guy, really, where I am in the show, but I'm curious to see where...
He's a bad guy, you know, like the anti-hero.
Yeah.
But, you know, you'll get to see it. It's very cool.
Is there one saga that was kind of the, oh my goodness moment for you out of everything?
Probably, yeah, the whole Majin Buu saga is probably the best in the Z series anyway. That's like the last story arc before it finished and they went to GT. That was a freaking train wreck. And after that, in 2015, did Super. But yeah, the Buu saga, the characters are a lot more defined. You really know the characters, their ins and outs at this point, and they've just got to stop this thing from taking over not just the Earth, but the universe. You know, it just gets on a bigger scale. You know, alliances are formed, and you know, strategies, and it gets so big, Mike. And I can't wait for you to see it, especially when it gets to Dragon Ball Super. It's like what you're experiencing now is just a small little drop in this massive universe that will become Dragon Ball Z and Dragon Ball Super.
Yeah.
It's very cool.
No, I'm excited. You know, I'm watching Dragon Ball with Kiddo and then watching Dragon Ball on my own. So it's piecing those pieces together as well, right? So it'll be exciting to see once we get to Super. I already told him, though, it's getting too warm here. So Dragon Ball's on hold until September. You should have seen his eyes. They about exploded in his head.
September? Jesus, that's a long time, man.
I had to tease him, you know. At least with summer break, we'll be able to watch some during the morning. But we just got hit with a huge heat wave right now, and it's not pretty. So
yeah, we're like the opposite down here. It's just getting colder and colder.
Yeah, it's so wild. Like when you talked about a few things when we've been chatting and stuff like that, where you're like, oh yeah, winter's here, and it's hard to wrap my head around, right? That how different, even the time zone thing, right? Where it's just like, oh, you know, it's now, you know, the next day down there. It's a wild.
I'm from the future,
right?
I'm talking to you from the future.
There you go. It's time for the magic word. Today's magic word and the final magic word is asparagus. 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 That has been today's magic word.
So I got another question for you. What was a book that you read that was also a movie? The first one.
The first one that, you know, I never read any media tie-in books when I was growing up. Because I read a lot of comics and all that. But when it came to seeing a movie and then wanting to know more about it, was Jurassic Park. Jurassic Park was the first one that I watched the movie and instantly wanted to read the book because it was just like, this was friggin' amazing. I need to know more. And I remember going and seeing it. I was 11 and we went to the grocery store, and the grocery store had a Jurassic Park paperback, and it was just like, I need this book. I just need it. And I remember devouring it and being like, oh my goodness, this is amazing. And Jurassic Park's one of those series that still holds a pretty special place in my heart. So that would be my first movie to book experience. And I was able to enjoy both without, now growing up a little more harsher on movie to book translations. But back then it was just, I get more of this. Like I get to get a taste, like that gateway drug of like, this is what Jurassic Park is. And then you read the book and you have so much more to envelop yourself into. So how about for yourself?
Harry Potter, actually.
Okay.
Well, I first read the book when I was like 9, the first one. What's it called again? Philosopher's Stone, that's right. The movie came out a year later, so that was cool. Obviously, there was a few key differences between the book and the movie. But, I mean, I tried to read each book before the movie came out, and I was successful on the first 4, up to Goblet of Fire. But I lost patience with reading as I got older, and I think the next book movie series I read and watched was Twilight in my late teens.
Okay.
Yeah. But, not real big into books. Not real big. I don't have the patience,
Interesting. For myself, I read comics more, and I still read a lot more comics than I read actual novels. But I did do the Harry Potter series. I'd seen the first 3 movies before I started reading the books. And from that, well, even when I saw the movies, they came out when I was getting older, right? So it wasn't really that wheelhouse of looking at. And I really pushed through reading the books more after I started working at a bookstore. And it was like, okay, well, I need to know more what this is. But the Twilight series, I never read because I had a bit of a hate relationship with it. Not for the fact of what it was, but solely because I worked at a bookstore. And I had to shelve and unbox so many of those books that it was just like, no, I don't want to deal with anything with this series. I can't do this.
It's like, this is Stephanie Meyer. The names on all these bloody books.
Right. And that kind of came actually, as much as I did read and end up watching Game of Thrones, it was the same feeling, because when his books were coming out for that series, I remember having to one Christmas build a tower. And what it was a spiral tower, and you had to have I think it was 6 books on the bottom, and then you had to spiral that thing up, and it got up to 5 feet tall, right? And
did they give you instructions on how to do this?
Yeah, they did. It was all merchandising standards, right? So, but I remember having to get creative, and you create these little towers of these things, and it just some series when it comes to that, I'm just like, no. But the Harry Potter, that's really become our jam, especially for our family. Katie loves it, and our son loves it. So it's
I've seen photos of you guys at Diagon Alley, right?
Yeah, well, we got to have at Hollywood there. So Hogsmeade is where we hope to get Diagon, because that's down in Orlando one day.
Yeah. Well, I've seen you remember you used to have it was your Instagram photo for a long time, you with the blue coat.
Yep.
Yeah. Fantastic beat.
Yeah, the Newt coat. Yeah, I love that jacket. Right. I love that jacket. Unfortunately, the lining in that, I got to figure out how to fix it, because the lining has decided to rip, unfortunately.
Oh,
so
that sucks.
Yeah.
Sometimes when you pay a premium for these, pop culture items, and they don't last.
Yeah, well, I will give props though. It was a Hot Topic coat, and I think it was only $60-$70 for the coat. But I wore the heck out of that thing. So I'm not super. The one I'm more mad about is the new Fantastic Beast coat. I already lost one of my buttons on it. I have no idea where that thing went. So it looks pretty. I look like a hobo in it now with the back piece. It was buttoned on, and the one fell off, and I can't find a matching button. So it just kind of hangs there, and I look a bit like a hobo jacket now. So, but I'll get my Dumbledore outfit again. So has your taste evolved or changed over the time?
Well, you know what? That's a really cool question, because I think my taste is constantly evolving and changing. There are a lot of fandoms that I never thought I would like. I often get surprised. Jessica Jones on Netflix was good. True Blood was unexplainably awesome, not just for the nudity. The mythology was kind of next level on that. But you know, I know it's not a nerd show, but I watched Gossip Girl with Jess, my wife, and I loved it. You know, no judgment now, everybody. Don't knock it till you try it.
Well, that's the beauty, is we're all nerds about something. So it's like, no matter what it is, it doesn't have to fall into that little box, right? That is considered, you know, the nerd. We're all fans for something. And whether it be a show like that, or whether it be Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. or True Blood, it's all something. So that's what's nice. And I think people that can evolve in their enjoyment of things, I think, can bring a better understanding and positivity to the fandom culture.
Yeah, 100%. As a person, like I believe we constantly change and grow, and that's what life is about. You know? New experiences, new styles, new times. That's what we all look forward to, and it's always exciting. Like, you know what? I never thought I would have tattoos, and I never thought I would wear no-show socks with my sneakers. And I've got those things. So.
Right?
Life is full of surprises.
Well, yeah, we all grow and change with it, and which is really nice. And especially when you're able, with your significant other, to be able to find things that you enjoy as well, right? So, yeah, there's shows.
It's all about sharing.
Yeah, there's shows that Katie watches that I watch with her that isn't my number one, but I've watched them for 15 years because it's something we do together and I'm cool with it, right? So, and she'll watch things with me where she's just like, okay, we're watching this, are we? So it's, you give that give and take, and, you know, you end up finding things that you really can enjoy together. And then it helps you grow as a couple as well.
Yeah, I like that. So, question for you. Did your taste ever change or evolve over time?
It is constantly changing. One thing I've noticed, though, is that I have felt the desire over time to not collect everything. For the longest time, I was very much the everything, no matter what it was. I've got multiple versions of certain characters, which I've realized now was probably not the best idea.
Yeah.
And I should really focus on one or two versions of a character that are iconic to myself, versus, say, having the pop, the pint size, the mystery mini, the action figure in this scale and that scale, and having an entire like shrine to one character. And I think it just got a little overwhelming. So I realized that too with my Donatello collection. I have a lot of Donatello figures. Some I'll never get rid of course, but it's always going to be, you know, trying to find that epic version of it. I think that's where I've really grown as a collector. And it tags in with, you know, the next question of when did you start getting into more collectibles? I think now, growing up and seeing the quality in something, I'd rather have versus just having it. And that's why when I started collecting the Dragon Ball stuff, because I was like, I need to have characters. It's just something that I need to have. I could have easily gone and got some pops, which look awesome, but I've begun a bit of a love-hate relationship with Funko, because I love to have things out of the box. And so many of the figures that I have now from Funko, and we've mentioned it on our past cast there, they don't stand up as well anymore. They start leaning or they start falling. So I realized that, sure, you know, $10-12 I can go get a version of this character. And if it's the only way I can get that character, then that'll be the way I'll do it, right? But if I can find a way to get that character in a more high-end classic look or posability or usability, I've begun taking that route. So that's where I've really been growing. And show-wise too, I've become more open. Like you were saying, definitely am a lot more interested in trying other things and not being so stuck that this is the only way. And that's where I feel like I've really grown as a person, to be more accepting about pretty much anything and taking suggestions more seriously versus just being like, oh, you should check this out. Yeah, I'll do that. And then never look at it. Right. And I did that with you. I won't lie. You tried for years, I think, to get me to try Dragon Ball. But until you actually explain more about it, then I opened my ears. Right. So.
Yeah. Well, you know, it's thank you for listening. And that's really cool that we can now connect over a new fandom together, you know? Yeah.
It's a great thing. And it's great to hear what people think of things, right? So with that then said, when did you move more into a higher end or more collectible phase in your life?
Yeah, I'd say it was only a few years ago, actually, but like I'd say it was about 2015. So I had bits and pieces I'd collected like over the years. Like I had a die-cast Mustang car model, which was cool. I actually had a Batpod model from The Dark Knight. And for years, I still do have a DC Direct 1/6 Joker from The Dark Knight. And Jess actually got that for me as my first Christmas present, like from her. So that was really cool. So that was like 10 years. It was really cool. But once I had all this stuff, I decided to get a glass display cabinet. And then I discovered Hot Toys. And that cabinet got full pretty quick. So I bought a second glass cabinet. And my first hot toy was Tony Stark, the mechanic from Iron Man 3. Now, if anyone knows Hot Toys, the quality is just above and beyond with the sculpt, the likeness, the details, and the accessories that you get. You certainly get what you pay for, no questions, But then I started getting in, like I guess money came into it as well, because a hot toy average is about $300, which is shocking for some people to hear, but they are kind of worth it once you actually understand them.
Yeah.
And like a lot of people will be like, how much you spend on that? I was like, oh, this was about $400 on that. They're like, $400? It's a toy. And I'm like, yeah, but it's not really just a toy,
Right. What's nice about the hot toy, though, is it doesn't seem to lose its value. The Infinity War Thor actually was up to $700 until they re-released it on the secondary market.
Wow. Yeah, that's nuts. Because I was pretty disappointed, because I know you got the Infinity War Thor, and I saw it and I'm like, I've got to get that. And then it sold out, and then people are selling it on eBay for $600-700, and I'm like, I can't afford that.
Yeah, but yeah, they're supposedly doing a re-release of it, so if you might be able to get another chance at directly from Sideshow type Hot Toys. So
yeah, I'll be in that. But like as I was saying with the whole money thing, but I still wanted to collect, so I started getting into the Hasbro Marvel Legends line, and soon after the SH Figure Arts line. And I'm actually all about the SHF these days, but I'm also branching into Mafex. They got some super dope figs, so I've got a Gwenpool coming.
Oh, you ordered that?
Yeah.
Nice.
Yeah, that should turn up in the mail today.
Because you just got the Marvel Legend of that, didn't you?
Yes, I did. Yes, and I wasn't that happy with it. And I should have just spent the money and probably got the Mafex straight up. But that's the review I'll be doing soon. I'll be doing a side-by-side review of both the Marvel Legends and the Mafex, just to show difference in quality and articulation, accessories. Yeah.
Okay.
People need to know where their money's going. So.
Yeah, I wish I had been able to get the Spider-Gwen, I believe it was from Reveltech, versus the Marvel Legend. The Marvel Legend is so lacking in posability. It's really disappointing.
I've actually got that one. And like the graph that I have with it is she's got one fisted hand and she's got one thwipping hand. And there's no interchangeable hands. That's all you get with them.
Yeah. Yeah.
And there's like, you get an alternate head with, the Gwen head, which, is very, she looks really depressed. So I wouldn't really recommend it. And at the time, I was probably one of the first collectors to get it here in Australia, because I hunted pretty hard for it. I need to get this, but it could have been better.
Yeah, the body sculpt's what bothers me, is because it's going to sound funny, but her butt's too wide. So to get her in some of those dynamic poses, she can't really squat it out to get that real spidery look, and that's what bugs me.
Yeah, well, that's basically to do with the build of the groin area. Like, there's no, it's not on a real ball joint. Like, it's not like the SHF line where you've got all the butterfly sort of joints that sort of go together for that posability. It's just like one pose or nothing.
Yeah.
When it comes to Hasbro, because they're cheaper figures, and I think that they rush their figures quite a bit. And they're obviously for mass production. They're not a rare figure. Anybody can pick them up. But over the years, I've learned. Yeah,
I definitely prefer now looking at a better quality one. I'd rather have just one of something. And if that meant only having one spider on my shelf, then that means one spider on my shelf, versus having so many things that I'm not 100% happy with it.
Yeah. Totally. Well, I think we're up to our last question, mate.
Yes, we are. I'll let you go.
You go. Okay. Have you ever cosplayed?
Have I ever cosplayed? I have never cosplayed.
Wow.
I don't think I could take the sexy photos, so I've never done it. Most people don't want to see me in spandex, so.
Well, it depends what character you go for. Then some people might not even know it's you.
That's very true. No, I've always wanted to do a cosplay. I just don't know who I'd want to do, and what character I'd want to do. And if I did it, I'd want to try to not half-ass it. I'd like to, my perfectionist side of me would like to see it be top notch in what it is. So we've always considered things, but I just can't seem to think of the one that would be the ultimate, if I'm going to spend the time and money to make this thing, to do it right. How about yourself?
Well, sadly, no, I've never actually cosplayed unless you can count the times I dressed up as Heath Ledger's Joker for Halloween, you know. But I've always wanted to, you know, but I'd have to pick a character that I could like hide my tattoo sleeves to correctly pull it off, you know?
Makes sense.
Do it right. But my ultimate goal would be Vegeta. Like, and that'd be a pretty easy one to do because he always has long sleeves and gloves with the armor, so that could work. But I know you're a DC fan, but I'm actually digging the look of the Red Hood from Batman Under the Red Hood, the animated film.
Oh, okay.
Like, you know, and he's also voiced by one of my favorite TV actors, Mr. Jensen Ackles from Supernatural. But he actually cosplayed as the Red Hood for last Halloween, if you saw that.
Yes, that was fantastic. What he had, the getup that he had gotten for it, it looked like it was straight from that cartoon.
It was freaking amazing. The metallic red paint on the helmet, like the whole the boots, the motorcycle jacket, Batman symbol on the chest armor, you know, guns, knives, and I think he even had the face mask underneath it, like when he took the helmet off of Jason Todd.
Yeah, he did a fantastic job with that. It was like the ultimate in trolling almost, though. Get us all excited that he's rocking this costume, only to find out it was his Halloween costume.
Oh, yeah. That's a big kick in the face. But, yeah, like one word would sum up like his whole outfit. That would be, well, it's a two-part word, badass.
Yes.
Very cool.
Well, I think you should be able to pull off the Vegeta thing. That'd be pretty rad. You know, you could easily get the blue undersuit, darker colored undersuit and all that. And the armor you should be able to build. You've been getting pretty crafty with your Dio and stuff like that. You could start foam building the armor. Yeah,
I was thinking that. But I actually found a dude on Instagram, and he's a cosplayer, and I think I might have tagged you in it. He's down here in Melbourne in Australia, and he 3D prints his own cosplay helmet, and he 3D prints, like, you know, all his Power Rangers helmets. He's a Power Rangers cosplayer.
Okay, yeah, I remember seeing those. Those were really cool.
And I was talking to him, and he's done a Red Hood one, and he could make one for me too.
Oh, nice.
It's going to be like 200.
Oh, you said 250?
Yeah, 250.
Oh, that's not too bad.
Yeah. If I really want to get into it, I have to really commit to it, because once I've bought that, then obviously I'll have to get the rest of the outfit, and I can just see it adding up pretty quick, you know. And I've never even been to a Comic-Con or a Supernova Expo or anything, so I'd have to go to one of those to really get my money's worth out of it, you know. So I'm not just going to walk down the street, like, you know, as the Red Hood.
That could be fantastic, though.
It could.
Scare the crap out of people, but...
But that being said, I was also, because he knows that I'm a Dragon Ball Z fan, he's also a Dragon Ball Z fan, and he said that he could also make me Vegeta's arm.
Oh, slick. That's
pretty cool. Yeah, also for around about $250. So I have to toss up which one would probably be worth more money for me.
Well, yeah, I could see you rocking the Vegeta armor. That seems to be one of your number one fandoms for sure.
Yeah, that'd be like my ultimate goal, you know, rock up some places Vegeta.
Right? That would be fantastic. Yeah, no, for myself, like, there's so many characters that I would do. Like, I would love to be able to do something like Green Arrow, not so much like the CW style, but more the comic, like the Rebirth, Otto Schmidt, his Rebirth costume for Green Arrow. I would love to do that.
Yeah, because didn't you and Katie want to do a Green Arrow and Canary cosplay together?
Yes. She's a huge Canary fan, and as I say, I like Green Arrow from the comics there. So I think that'd be fun for us to do together, especially because, you know, I usually have a beard and I wouldn't have to like shave it off, because that's one of the things too, is how ridiculous sometimes you can look if you've got facial hair for a character that's not supposed to have facial hair, right?
Yeah. I can get that. Like, yeah, if the Joker had facial hair, it just wouldn't work. Right.
Well, it worked for a little bit in that Kevin Smith story a few years back, but that was when he was like beaten and broken in a hospital bed for months. So, but
I don't think I've seen that.
But yeah, no. I'd love to be able to do a Power Ranger one. I think that would also help get away from the face aspect of like having facial hair or something like that.
Yeah.
But I need to get a little more fit to be able to rock one of those spandex suits, because they leave nothing to the imagination.
No, you're right. You have to get a codpiece too.
Yeah, keep everything tucked back. But do you, like, around here we only have the one con every year. Do you have a lot of cons down that way?
There's at least 2 or 3. So we do have Comic-Con, like Oz Comic-Con, and we've got another one that's on every year. It's called Supernova Pop Culture Expo.
Okay.
Yeah, they usually do the Oz Comic-Cons in like Melbourne, Sydney. I'm pretty sure they do Brisbane. I've just never gotten around to doing it. Hopefully this year. I've written it down. I want to go to one. I've never been to one, which would be really cool.
Yeah, that would be pretty fun, especially if there was anyone there that you wanted to see. That's the biggest thing.
Yeah, but like they announced at one of them that, well, they had to redo all of their guests. Like all of them had to cancel. Like they were going to have like Tom Welling from Smallville. I would have gone to see him, That would have been dope. Cool. But yeah, apparently they all had to cancel. They're like, oh, we'll be announcing new names soon. Please stand by. And then I think they just replaced it with a bunch of B-listers. So I'm not saying that Tom Welling's a B-lister, but he's someone I probably would see because I spent most of my adolescent years watching Smallville every Thursday night at 7 o'clock. So yeah,
it's hard. It's hard to go to cons if there's no one there that you want to see. But Tom Welling would be the last episode we talked about Smallville and us growing as a couple with it and being able to meet like. The Calgary one, which would have been a little too far for us to go to, had both Tom Welling and Michael Rosenbaum together. And that just would have been amazing to have that opportunity to meet them for sure.
Yeah, they've got good banter. Like they've obviously you can't have Clark Kent without Lex Luthor. I did watch a YouTube video when they were on a panel together at one of those shows, and they're pretty cool, both those guys. They haven't done anything really since Smallville. I think none of them have. Yeah, Welling's on
I don't know if he's still on or if he was, but he's on that Lucifer show. But I don't know what Rosenbaum does his own podcast, Inside of You, with Michael Rosenbaum, and he talks to people. So that one's really fun because I think everybody just wants to get inside of someone at some point. So,
well, I guess that's what life's all about, Mike.
Yeah. Well, hey, we got inside of you today, man. So. We got some deep insight.
Yeah, we got a lot out of you too. Stuff I didn't know. That's cool. That's a lot.
That's the fun thing about it, is being able to talk about things that you grew up with or all that. And that's why we coined the term RADstalgia, taking what was nostalgic and making it rad.
I saw that for the first time. I was like, damn, that's cool.
So, yeah, I figure I'm old enough. I can create words. RADstalgia, radnesia, they're all mine. But you can use them. It. Start breaking out that hashtag, RADstalgia.
RADstalgia. I'm going to start doing that. Yeah.
There we go. Get that trending. RADstalgia.
Yeah, I was actually thinking myself about making up my own hashtag. Don't know what it'll be yet.
Oh, well then you use it. I'll slap some stuff on there, especially if it's Dragon Ball related.
Hell yeah.
You have a contest going on yourself, don't you, sir?
Yeah, I do. So I'm doing a giveaway at 100 YouTube subscribers and when I hit 2,000 Instagram followers. So I'm up to 58 YouTube subscribers, so everybody needs to help me get up there and subscribe. And I'm up to 1,700 Instagram followers, so I'm very close to my goal.
Great, that's awesome.
Yeah, once those numbers are hit, there'll be the competition where you'll have to comment and you'll have to tag some people in it. And then I'll be able to do a random draw and you could go in the draw to win an Insaiyandragonball hat.
That's awesome. So definitely everyone go check out Insaiyandragonball on YouTube and on Instagram.
Hit that follow button.
There you go. You just slapped a sticker on your truck too, didn't you?
I did. I got them yesterday. They got printed out. So you'll also receive a sticker as well if you win the hat. So They go
Nice.
hand in hand. If you want to buy one off me, anybody, just let me know. Send me a DM. They're going to be cheap. They'll be like $5 plus shipping, whatever that'll be. But, really like your support and the support of my fandom and my brand. It's like kind of the thing that I'm really trying to grow and focus on. I think my wife's getting a bit annoyed with it, but she's coming around it.
Well, yeah, it takes away from some family time probably once in a while, or especially when you drop and have to take a photo or do something like that. But,
Yeah, I'll have to try really limit my time. Reserve time for family and time for Dragon Ball.
Well, you learn over time and you figure out the things that work for you and all that. And, it's building up that following of people and those like-minded individuals to be able to really support your hobby and all that. And that's what it is. It is a hobby for us all to be able to have all these. And as much as it would be lovely to be able to have it as our full-time job, for some, it's just not a reality, right? So it's kudos on you for building that following up.
Thank you. And to you too, Mike. We're all both working together and, we'll get there. We enjoy it. It's not so much like we have to do it. It's like, it's like a need as well. It's something to look forward to. Something to really be excited about. You know what I mean?
Yeah, totally. I just did an interview over on Jonathan Bell's podcast. It's a creative lifestyle podcast. And I mentioned that I don't like to see any other account as an enemy, because we're all in this whole thing together. And if we can all work together to help support each other, especially when you find those like-minded individuals, you can really create a family. And that's what can be really nice and uplifting, to find in individuals that you can really spark interest and you can toss things back and forth. And even let's just with this here, with having you come on a few times, it's an interesting flow of events. And I really like it. And I try to stay as positive as possible with all that, because I believe our fandom needs to be placed up there, any fandom, and enjoyed and celebrated. So, everyone has an opinion. Everyone's opinion in some form can be correct. It's just a matter of respecting everyone and taking it, like we differ on opinions when it comes to some movies, but it's not like I'm going to be like, oh, you didn't like my opinion, so you can just go suck it. Right. Like, I respect where you're coming from and I understand it. And it doesn't boil my blood to the point where I have to like scream into the microphone at you or text you that like, you suck. It's like, hey, that's your jam. And that's what I hope to try to bridge, especially with this podcast and talking and reaching out to individuals and everything, and finding those people that we can create still a loving, rad community within everything, even if we're different.
Yeah, it's very well said. I totally agree. But yeah, I don't rag on other people's fandoms. Like a lot of people could probably rag on mine, but it's what you like is what you like. Everyone's different. It'd be pretty boring if we were all the same and like the same things. But yeah, it's not about negativity. It's about positivity, and that's what you live by, and I like to live by it as well. And it's just supporting each other and finding new levels of awesome together.
Exactly. I appreciate you coming on today, Theo, to talk about firsts, because it's a very deep, daunting subject to talk about your first time with anything. Yeah. And you too, man. Like, hopefully we gave a lot of people some RADstalgia today. Yes, that's what the hope is because everything's built on nostalgia. We all have to have a bit more RADstalgia and remember the things we like and enjoy them. I hope once we get deeper into Dragon Ball that we'll have a hardcore Dragon Ball conversation. I don't know how long you want to wait for that. You want me to wait till... I'm a patient man. Just like every time you're like, oh, I got to get this new figure. Like, what is it? I'm like, I can't tell you, man. It's a massive spoiler. I know it's hard. I don't want to miss out. I don't want to miss out and pay scalper prices. So some of them I just have to try to get and then just ignore, right? And just go on the radness of the figure. Yeah. I was really hoping that you wouldn't find out about Fusion, but I guess it's inevitable. You know what I mean? Oh, it's everywhere, though. I knew about Fusion before I even started watching because there was like T-shirts at Hot Topic with Fusion on it. So, but with that, well, I suppose we should wrap this thing up. Yeah, we're gonna hit probably one of our longest episodes this week, but that's okay. But with that, yeah. I should let you go because you probably got to get to work and all that. So thank you again, sir. I really appreciate you coming on. Do you have any final words for the folks out there? All good.
thank you for listening. Please subscribe to Mike's channel and stay super.
I like it. Thank you again, Theo.
Thanks, Mike. Talk to you soon.
And that was Theo from over at Insaiyandragonball. Check him out on Instagram. That's right. It is fantastic to talk to Theo. It's a good time. I love it. I talk to him probably more than I should on a regular basis, but that's okay because the internet helps us build a friendship with like-minded people that we can express our rad fandoms and have a great time with. Yeah, we had a bit of a lag there. Internet calling can make it a little funky, but at the same time, it's great that we can contact and then we can share these stories with you so you can get to know how people rock their fandoms in real life. If you're ever interested in talking about your fandoms and how you keep it positive and how you keep it rad, hit me up on DM on our Instagram or Facebook or Twitter so we can talk about this. I would love to hear more stories from people about how they do. And speaking of that, we got a special episode coming up. The episode is going to deal with the new Star Wars Galaxy's Edge. That's right. We had a friend go down there and check it out, and we're going to have a little bit of a story for you on that. So keep your eyes peeled, or keep your ear holes peeled, of course. Thank you again for listening. I love hearing from all of you. I love all of you for listening. It's great. This week, Katie isn't here. Next week, bonus episode, Katie isn't here. Just a bit of a break because we're going into RADstalgia and all that. I miss her, but hopefully you miss her. But she'll be back, especially for our whole retrospect on Toy Story coming through. 4 movies, 2 specials, toys, rides. It's all going to be Toy Story coming up as well. So thank you again. Be kind. Don't rewind. Stay rad instead.
Thank you for listening. Want more rad content? Follow us on Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter. And don't forget to subscribe, rate us, and leave us a review.
And remember, be excellent to each other and party on, dudes!